London, a city perpetually shrouded in a damp grey blanket. The fog crept through the cracks of 221B Baker Street, tasting of coal smoke and secrets. I sat in my chair, the violin silent beside me, my mind a tempest of boredom. The world outside was a dull, predictable loop of mundane crimes and even more mundane criminals. I needed a puzzle. I craved a challenge worthy of the name Sherlock Holmes. John, bless his well-meaning heart, was attempting to read the paper aloud, his voice a droning counterpoint to the city's hum. He prattled on about some racehorse, Silver Blaze, a name that meant nothing to me, just another animal, bred for the fleeting amusement of the masses. But then the details began to surface, like faint glimmers of light in the oppressive gloom. The horse, a national favourite, was gone, vanished from a locked stable in the heart of Dartmoor, and its trainer, a man named John Straker, had been found dead out on the moors. His skull shattered, a missing champion, a dead man. The press was in a frenzy. The police were baffled. A significant amount of money hung in the balance. It was almost interesting. Suddenly the pieces began to click into place, not to form a solution, but to present a problem of sufficient complexity. The telegram from Colonel Ross, the horse's owner, was a desperate plea. The note from Inspector Gregory of Scotland Yard was a professional courtesy, masking his own confusion. They were all lost in the fog, just like the city. They saw a horse theft and a murder. I saw a web of possibilities, a symphony of motives and alibis waiting to be deconstructed. My mind palace lit up, corridors of data flashing, connecting the dots they couldn't even see. This wasn't about a horse anymore. It was about the intricate, messy, and fascinating darkness of human nature. The game, as they say, was afoot. The official story was simple, deceptively simple. John Straker had been a loyal servant to Colonel Ross for years, the trusted guardian of the magnificent Silver Blaze. The horse was the undisputed favourite for the upcoming Wessex Cup, a creature of immense value and national pride. The night of the disappearance, Straker had overseen the final lockdown of the stables at King's Pyland. 3 stable hands were on duty, one of whom had been drugged with powdered opium slipped into his evening meal. In the dead of night, someone had entered the stable, led the prized racehorse out into the wild expanse of Dartmoor, and vanished without a trace. The second act of this tragedy was discovered at dawn. A search party, frantic over the missing horse, stumbled upon the body of John Straker. He lay in a shallow dip on the moor, a dreadful wound to his head, his overcoat still on. In his left hand he clutched a small, peculiar knife, a cataract knife more suited to delicate surgery than a fight. In his right, a cravat belonging to a London bookmaker, a man named Fitzroy Simpson. Simpson had been seen lurking around the stables earlier, attempting to pry for information. The train ride to Devon was a blur of green fields and grey skies, a fleeting landscape I barely registered. My mind was already on the moor, sorting and cataloguing the known facts, discarding the irrelevant noise. John sat opposite me, attempting small talk, trying to ground me in the present. Inspector Gregory met us at the station, his face a mask of professional confidence, barely concealing underlying uncertainty. We stood in the shallow depression where John Straker's body had been found. The ground was a mess of trampled earth and hoof prints. Gregory pointed out the obvious: Straker's footprints, Simpson's footprints, the tracks of Silver Blaze. My eyes, however, were seeing a different story written in the mud. The ground was a canvas, and every mark was a brushstroke. I found a single spent Vesta match, overlooked by the police in their haste. Gregory watched me with a mixture of respect and impatience, unable to comprehend the significance of these minute details. I left him to his theories and made my way to the King's Pyland stables. The air was thick with the scent of hay, leather, and fear. Colonel Ross, a man accustomed to command, was reduced to a bundle of nerves, his authority rendered meaningless by the disappearance of his prized animal. He showed me the stable from which Silver Blaze had been taken, the drugged stable boy's room, the curry that had been served for dinner. Everyone was looking for the horse, for the grand, dramatic solution. They were all looking in the wrong direction. The key to this mystery wasn't grand at all. It was small, personal, and hidden in plain sight. At the stables, Inspector Gregory was eager to demonstrate the thoroughness of his investigation. He pointed towards a kennel. The dog did nothing on the night of the incident. It would have barked its head off if a stranger like Simpson had approached. That's why we believe the drugged stable boy, Ned Hunter, was the one who brought the dog its food. The culprit must have known the dog wouldn't make a sound if it was him. He was so close, yet so profoundly far from the truth. I listened patiently, my mind racing ahead of his plodding logic. "Was there any other point to which you would wish to draw my attention?" I asked. He gestured vaguely around the stables, confident he had covered all the important facts. "To the curious incident of the dog in the night time," I stated. Gregory looked at me, his brow furrowed in confusion. "The dog did nothing in the night time," he replied, stating the obvious. "That," I said, letting the word hang in the air, "was the curious incident." A flicker of understanding, or perhaps just annoyance, crossed his face before he dismissed it. The silence of the dog was everything. It was not a minor detail, it was the central pillar upon which the entire case rested. A watchdog is trained to bark at strangers. It does not bark at those it knows. The dog made no sound when the horse was led from its stable. That meant only one thing. The person who took the horse was not a stranger. It was someone the dog knew intimately, someone it saw every single day. It wasn't Fitzroy Simpson, the London bookie. It was a familiar face, a trusted presence within the stable yard itself. This simple deduction shattered the foundation of the police's case. John looked at me, a slow dawn of comprehension on his face. The police were hunting for an intruder who had breached the fortress from the outside. But the evidence of the silent dog screamed that the betrayal had come from within. The enemy wasn't at the gates. He'd been living inside the castle walls all along. This changed the entire direction of the investigation. We were no longer looking for a thief who had committed murder. We were looking for a murderer who had a reason to stage a theft. And that murderer was John Straker himself. With the theory of an inside job now firmly planted in my mind, the other clues began to snap into focus, their true meaning finally revealed. John Straker was no longer the victim. He was the prime mover. My first stop was to re-examine the items found on his body. The police had catalogued them and filed them away, but to me, they were a confession. In his pockets, I found the usual assortment of items, a wallet, keys, a pipe, but there was also a bill from a high-end London dressmaker made out to a Mr. William Derbyshire. This was no ordinary purchase for a country horse trainer. The name Derbyshire was clearly an alias. The cost suggested a life far removed from the stables of Dartmoor. It spoke of a secret life, a double identity. John Straker, the loyal servant, was leading another life in London. The motive was now taking shape. Debt. Straker was a man in desperate need of money. Then there was the knife, the small, delicate cataract knife found, clutched in his hand. The police had been baffled by it. Why would a man bring such a flimsy weapon to a supposed confrontation? It made no sense as a tool for self-defense, but it made perfect sense as a tool for something else entirely. Cataract surgery involves making a minute, precise incision in the eye. What other creature has a structure that could be subtly and carefully nicked to induce temporary lameness without leaving an obvious external mark? A horse. My investigation took me away from the crime scene and towards a neighbouring stable, Mapleton. I made a seemingly innocuous inquiry. Had he noticed anything unusual about the flock on the moor? A flock of sheep grazing on misty Dartmoor, one limping slightly, unnoticed by others. His confusion was telling. He told me several of his sheep had recently gone lame. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The lame sheep were not a coincidence. They were practice. John Straker was skilled with horses, but not with delicate surgical instruments. He couldn't risk practicing on a valuable animal, so he used the sheep on the moor as his surgical subjects. He honed the precise, subtle cut with his cataract knife. The sudden lameness was the discarded rough draft of his criminal plan. He was preparing for his performance on Silver Blaze, ensuring he could disable the horse without raising suspicion. The picture of that fateful night completed in my mind. Straker led Silver Blaze into the dark moor, cataract knife in hand. He chose a hollow for privacy. He draped his overcoat over a gorse bush to shield his candle. He struck a Vesta match, the very one I had found in the mud, to see the horse's leg. But he had made a fatal miscalculation. He had forgotten the animal's fundamental nature. A racehorse is instinctive, highly strung, sensitive. Straker bent to make the incision. The glint of steel in faint light must have startled Silver Blaze. The horse reared, lashed out with its hind legs. A steel-shod hoof struck Straker's forehead. He fell, dead. The horse panicked and bolted into the night, leaving its dead master behind. With Straker's plan and his fate now crystal clear, only one question remained. Where was Silver Blaze? The horse had fled into the night, a terrified fugitive. It wouldn't have gone far. Logic dictated it would seek shelter and companionship. The most likely place was the nearest stable, Mapleton, the home of Silas Brown. I confronted Brown, laying out my deductions not as a theory but as an established fact. I described how he must have found the prize horse wandering on the moor, recognized it instantly, and saw an opportunity too great to resist. Brown, a man of bluster and defiance, crumbled under the cold weight of my logic. He had found the horse, led it back to his stables and hidden it away. His plan was simple: keep Silver Blaze hidden until after the Wessex Cup, thereby ensuring the defeat of his greatest rival and clearing the field for his own horse. I made him a proposition. His secret would remain safe, his role in the affair concealed on one condition: he was to prepare the horse for the Wessex Cup and ensure it ran. The public, Colonel Ross and the world believed Silver Blaze was lost. They would have their champion back. Justice in this case was not about punishing a man for his foolish greed, but about restoring order and seeing the race run as it was meant to be. Race day at Winchester was a spectacle of Victorian England at its peak. The stands were a sea of top hats, colourful dresses, the air buzzing with anticipation. Colonel Ross stood beside us, his expression grim, a man attending a funeral for his own hopes. He had entered his horse as a formality, but he held no expectation of seeing it. The bookies had written off Silver Blaze. The final act was about to begin. Horses led out for the preliminary canter. A magnificent bay horse pranced into view, a distinctive white blaze on its forehead, number 4 on its saddlecloth, powerful, graceful, strong, but no resemblance to the grey champion.
Colonel Ross stared, mask of confusion. "That's not my horse," he said. "Good heavens, what have you done, Mr. Holmes? That's not Silver Blaze at all."
I smiled. "Wait and watch." The race began. My horse surged forward, power undeniable. It ran with fire and fury, leaving others struggling in its wake. It rounded the final turn, thundered down the home straight, pulled away with every stride. The crowd fell into stunned silence, then erupted into a roar. The unknown bay crossed the line, undisputed winner. A victory of breathtaking dominance. After the race, in the saddling paddock, the truth was revealed. I called for a stable hand with a bucket of spirits and a sponge. I washed the horse's neck and face. The dark bay colour began to run, revealing the dappled grey coat beneath. White stockings emerged. The silver blaze on its forehead appeared. Silas Brown had used dye to disguise the horse, hoping to hide it in plain sight. Silver Blaze had returned. Not a ghost, but a disguised victor. Back in the comfort of the train, speeding towards the familiar fog of London, I laid out the final threads for a still reeling Watson and a jubilant Colonel Ross. The greatest deceptions are often built on the simplest of truths, and the most baffling questions have the most elementary answers.